Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest episode of the Premier League betting show with myself, Matt Hill, and my colleague Brad Walker. And if you're watching the Premier League betting show for the first time, well, it's pretty simple, really. What we do is we go through the upcoming weekend's action from England's top flight and run through each game, give 2 or 3 minutes on each one, and give you a best bet so you can go into the weekend with your card marked and hopefully a few winners to follow. Last week, Brad kind of kept us propped up there. I had a bit of a rough week. I think I had one winner. Brad, I think you were more like three. So good performance there. Hopefully more of the same this week. How's your week been thus far?
Yeah, it's been decent so far. Like you said, we had an all right weekend last time out. Hopefully, we can carry on that this weekend. We had a few good winners
Oh, you
midweek
did.
as
I
well.
don't think I can claim that, but you did.
Well, odds now as a whole did then. Let's say with Adam's written piece as well on the website. His bet builders coming in, so we've had a great week there.
Yeah, I should definitely give that a plug. So we got Adam Drury doing some EFL pieces for us and Championship backers, and he landed a 42-1 winner on Tuesday night, and then followed it up with a 55-1 winner on Wednesday. I think time to retire for Adam. I don't think it gets any better than that, really. But no, we've got some fantastic content on the website this week, if I don't say so myself, from football to racing to other bits. And yeah, we've got a World of Wages column with Felix Mawson-Pate, which is a really good read. We've got a nice piece on the next Tottenham manager from a guest writer there, Mitch Fretton, as well. So definitely head over to oddsnow.com and check out some of the fantastic stuff on the website if you like your sports betting. I'm guessing you do, given you've landed on this video. Well, without any further ado, we will dive into the action. There's no early kickoff on Saturday in the Premier League, which is a rare occurrence, I must say. So we go straight into the 3 p.m s. Brad, you're going to kick us off with Brighton at home to Everton. Brighton off the back of a great win at Old Trafford against Manchester United, and things definitely feeling brighter at Everton as well with the return of David Moyes, who got his first win as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Brighton. They were on a bit of a barren run before that game with United, weren't they? I think they were 8 games without a win over Christmas in the lead up to that. In the lead up a few weeks before that, sorry, I think that's now their 3rd consecutive win. May I correct myself there at Old Trafford. But they were more than worthy winners against Ruben Amorim's side, who are typical Man United, really, I guess you can say. They're showing promise in the big games, but then drop off in a game where on paper you might have fancied them to pick up something. But nevertheless, Brighton will be chuffed. With that, they now find themselves in 9th and only 4 points off the top 4. It's remarkable, really, when you look at some of the sides in the top half of the Premier League, the likes of Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, of course, the obvious pick, are really flying high and making the most of some drab seasons from some of the usual big hitters. But yeah, fair play to Brighton. There's a great result, and like you said, you mentioned Everton. Sorry, they'll be buoyant following their 3-2 home win over Tottenham last week at Goodison Park. I'm not really sure if Everton were brilliant or Tottenham were terrible, if I'm completely honest, but it is a big boost for them nevertheless. And David Moyes, like you said, it's his first win since taking over again at the club. They have actually got quite a positive record at this ground heading into the weekend. They've won 2 of the last 3 at the Amex, have Everton, and they drew the other. But then you look at their recent away record in general, and it's not quite too good a read. I think it's probably an understatement to say that, with just 1 win in their last 21 on the road in the league. Brighton have also only lost 1 match at home so far in the league this season, though they have drawn 6. So they have been prone to dropping points, particularly against teams that you'd expect them to beat at home, Brighton, and it'd be interesting to see how this one pans out. I think the theme of, I say Everton's away games, but of Everton games in general, has been the failure to score. They've not scored in in 5 of their last 6 on the road. I think their struggles in front of goal have been pretty well documented, having only scored 18 goals in 21 Premier League matches so far. They were impressive on the front foot against Tottenham, but again, that Tottenham side has been leaking chances against absolutely everyone this season. I think we need to see it over a longer period to be fully convinced that Everton have overcame their struggles in front of goal. Like I said, I'm not really sure if Everton were brilliant or Tottenham were just dog awful. It's very hard to really to tell lately with Tottenham. And while Brighton don't boast the strongest of defensive records this season, I do think they will cope well against, well, I think it's fair to say it is still a pretty toothless Everton attack. So I do think Brighton to win 2-0 at 19-10 with William Hill is a more than fair price. That's gonna be my main bet from this game. I'm also gonna cover myself with a little side bet, if you want to call it that. Kara Matoma And the Japanese winger for Brighton, of course, he's been in brilliant form in recent weeks. He scored in their last 2 Premier League matches. He also has 2 goals in 4 appearances against Everton. So I'm always going to put him up to score any time. That comes in at 14-5 with Betway. Just a fun little player prop there on the side. But yeah, the main bet will be Brighton to win to nil, which comes in at 19-10.
Right, kicking us off with a couple of bets in that one, siding definitely with Brighton in that one is Brad. Well, back to me then for Liverpool, who are at home to Ipswich, and it's always a nice occasion when newly promoted sides get to go to grounds like Anfield, isn't it? Particularly for their long-suffering supporters. But I think it's fair to say the market isn't giving Ipswich much chance of a happy ending here. It's only very few times in the season when you see odds quite like this. Ipswich all the way out at 25-1 to win this game on the Betfair Exchange. Liverpool no bigger than 1-9, with the draw even all the way out at 12-1. I think, those prices are definitely factoring in Ipswich's last result, which was a 6-0 hammering at home to Manchester City. Although bizarrely, I think most of their heavy defeats this season have actually come on their own patch. On the travels, they're actually very competitive. They've only lost by more than a single goal 2 times this season in away matches. So definitely setting up in a more compact fashion away from home and making games very competitive under their very shrewd boss, Kieran McKenna. And I think they would have probably taken it, Ipswich. Yes, it's not the best points return, 16 points from 22 games, but they're still literally a point from hauling themselves out of the relegation zone, which I think if you offered that to any Ipswich fan after 22 games at the start of the season, they'd have snapped your hand off for that. So firmly in there, still with a chance of staying up. These two actually met on opening day. You may remember Ipswich gave a good account of themselves on that occasion before losing 2-0. 2 second-half Liverpool strikes settling that one. And the league leaders are in decent nick. It's fair to say the obvious temptation might be to back Arne Slot's men on a big handicap here, given the odds. But I'm very wary of that approach because they haven't actually scored more than 3 goals in a game at Anfield this season. And 7 of those 10 home fixtures, despite there being a lot of wins, have scored 2 goals exactly. So it tends to be, we've touched on it many times on the show this season, it's so much more controlled and measured Liverpool than it was under Jurgen Klopp. They're quite happy to see games out with a minimum of fuss and by a low margin with an element of control. So I think that presents an opportunity here with this game. Adding in Kieran McKenna as a coach, who, as I say, I really do rate him highly. And I think he'll, after that humbling by Manchester City, I think he will just tighten things up and look to stay in the game a little bit here. I don't think they'll have enough to cause the shock ultimately, but I think Liverpool to win with under 3.5 goals in the match may well be a good way of playing this one. As I say, no real regular pattern of Liverpool dominating teams. 17-10 about this, which I was really, really surprised by. Their favourite scoreline seems to be like a 2-0 or a 2-1. Either of those would do us nicely here. And I think Ipswich, the market is maybe underestimating their away efforts this term, where they have been pretty competitive. A narrow Liverpool victory, kind of how I see this one going, Brad. Back over to you, mate, for Southampton, who are at home to Newcastle. Southampton, who briefly threatened a revival, but back to being pretty abject.
Yeah, I think this is probably the perfect game for Newcastle to bounce back in here, isn't it? Southampton look pretty hapless, as you say there. The host, of course, with 10 losses now in their last 12 matches, including their last 5 on the spin. They've got a defensive record which is abysmal, conceding 50 goals already so far in the league at an average of 2.27 per game. I think only Wolves have conceded more with 51 than them. Southampton only 2 clean sheets. And like you said, they do deserve some credit for fighting back against Nottingham Forest, but ultimately they left themselves with far too much to do. We move on to Newcastle themselves at the opposite end of the country, who was stunned, I think it's fair to say, in that 4-1 home defeat to Bournemouth last weekend. I think it was a massive shock given their form leading up to it. They had won 6 Premier League matches on the spin heading into that game. But again, this weekend, it does almost look like the perfect opponent to bounce back against. So I am going to go with a Newcastle win with over 3.5 goals here. That comes in at 9-5 with Betfair. As I said, the Southampton's defensive record really does speak for itself. And there have also been at least 4 goals scored in total in their last 3 matches in the league. That includes that 5-0 loss to Brentford in their last home match. And I think there's been over 3.5 scored in 50% of their home matches in total this season, and in 4 of Newcastle's away games. So putting all that together, I think there's plenty of juice in that price, just shy of 2-1 with a Newcastle win and over 3.5 goals. I'm going to keep it short today. Like I said, I don't think that too much needs to be said about Southampton that hasn't already been said, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We've repeated ourselves a few times this season about Southampton just not good enough for the level. It has to be said. Newcastle, yeah, bit of a shock last week, but does look a great opportunity to bounce back. Newcastle winning over 3.5 goals, just shy of 2-1, as Brad says, 9-5 best price currently on the market. Well, back to me then for Wolves, who are at home to Arsenal. We talk about teams not cut out for the level. Well, Wolves, I think they probably have got the quality in their ranks to be competing at this level, but things just not going well for them either. They made that change of manager, didn't they? Vitor Pereira coming in for Gary O'Neill, and he enjoyed some of the famed new manager bounce by taking 7 points from his first 3 games in charge, but things have quickly reverted to type. They've lost their last 3 straight. They shipped 3 goals in each of those defeats. And once again, we see tempers fraying among players and supporters. Mateus Cunha, who's so often been the star man for Wolves, coming in for a lot of criticism from fans for the way he acted in their last game and his body language, which was widely criticised and he's said to be looking like lazy, stropping around the pitch. I saw he bit at a local journalist as well, who criticised him on Twitter as well. So all the as somebody who's seen their team relegated on several occasions through their life, sadly for me, all the recipe and ingredients of a relegation here, I think, tempers fraying, just so much indiscipline. I always think it bodes really badly when you see that kind of thing from the outside. And in terms of a Wolves perspective, in terms of results, it's just really, really tough to make a case for them here against Arsenal. Arsenal have struggled a little bit for consistency themselves, I think it's fair to say. Early exit from the FA Cup to Man United on penalties, defeat in the League Cup semi-final first leg against Newcastle, and then a couple of frustrating draws in the Premier League as they tried to make that sizable gap up with Liverpool. They're drawn to Brighton and Tottenham. Brighton, no shame in that result, of course. They did at least get that win over Tottenham, which will have made the fans happy. But I think frustration would be the general word around Arsenal at the moment. They bounced back well in midweek with a comfortable success over Dynamo Zagreb in the Champions League. And as I say, even with their recent wobbles, you'd say they have too much for Wolves here. They're 1-2 for the win, with a general 7-2 about the draw, and Wolves all the way out at 6-1. I actually think that 1-2, if you're building an accumulator, is a really rock solid one to add in. But I think I'll go for a little bit more value. We've talked so many times this year about the way Wolves hemorrhage goals, and I think there's a bit of value to be had on backing Arsenal centre halves here. William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, respectively, in the anytime goal scorer markets. Gabriel is probably the one you think of more as the goal scorer. He's 7-1 best price with Betfair, and Saliba out at 12-1. They've got 5 goals in the Premier League between them already. We know the threat Arsenal possess from set pieces. Wolves have been pretty dreadful from defending set pieces this season, and they've also conceded a league high 52 goals. So I think split stakes, half a point each on the 2 centre backs will be the way I play this game. Brad, back over to you then for Bournemouth, who are at home to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, 2 of the 2 surprise packages, I think it's fair to say, in the Premier League this season. Forest and Bournemouth, of course, flying high, both hoping for European football next season. I think it's very fair to say that they're on course to get that right now. We start with Bournemouth, of course, the home side are enjoying a phenomenal season. You touched on their incredible performance against Newcastle last week, 4-1 win. Of course, Justin Kluivert bagging a hat-trick, his second of the season. They're now in 7th place, remarkably just 3 points off the top 4. We're approaching the end of January now. It's remarkable what Andoni Iraola's done down there. He is being linked with the Tottenham job, I think, if Andrew Postecoglou was to vacate. But just for Bournemouth's sake, you'd love to at least see him see this season out, given everything that they've achieved so far. And without even considering their injury problems too, if you look at the injury list, they're currently having to work around. They've got 10 players sidelined at the time of recording, yet they're still unbeaten in their last 10 matches in the league. 6 of those they won as well. Forest as well, you look at where they were last season. Me being the idiot that I am, when I was doing my Premier League previews at the start of this new season, I tipped them to go down. So I think I'm going to have to eat some humble pie with that one. I can't see
Oh,
that one
well,
happening.
that's not looking so good now, is it? But we all make mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not the best pick, but we move on. We brush that one under the carpet. But yeah, they have been superb. Nottingham Forest, Nuno Espirito Santo's side. They're now unbeaten in 9 themselves. They won 8 of those. I think the only exception was that 1-1 home draw with Liverpool. And of course, the latest was that 3-2 home victory against Southampton. Initially led 3-0. They were made to sweat a little at the end. If you look at the highlights, there was a terrific clearance from Ola Aina to deny the Southampton equaliser in the final minutes, in the dying seconds of that game. And Chris Wood, of course, was still on the score sheet yet again. 14 goals now he's got this season. The odds are very well spread. I think it's fair to say for this one. Bournemouth currently narrow favourites at 11 to 10 just because I think they're so brilliant at home. Look at the teams they've beaten at home this season, the likes of Arsenal and Man City. Forest do come in underdogs, despite boasting the second best away record in the league. They've only lost 2 times on the road this season, so it is hard to separate these two. But I am anticipating a tight encounter no matter who wins. I'm not going to pick a result because, like I said, I think you can make a strong case for both. So instead, I'm going to go down the route of backing the draw at half time. Now, exactly half of Bournemouth's home fixtures have been level at the break this season, and the same can be said of 45% of Forest's away games as well. Neither of these sides tend to be involved in high-scoring affairs. I think they're both averaging less than 3 goals a game in total in the Premier League so far, and so getting the draw at half time at 30 to 10 with multiple bookmakers is more than fair in my eyes. It should be a good game, this. I mean, it's, gutted that it's a 3:00 game. I wouldn't mind watching it, but it could make for a good watch. Like I said, 2 very good teams, but likable sides as well. But yeah, the draw at halftime makes sense for me. 13 to 10. That's where I'll be putting my money for this one.
It does look a good game, and I can see the reasoning there. 2 teams that play within the fine margins. Forest will be hoping to nick it, but Bournemouth a tough nut to crack indeed. Manchester City take on Chelsea in the 5:30 kickoff, and this looks like a tasty little affair, doesn't it? 2 teams who at different times have been right in the mix to win the Premier League title, but I think it's fair to say I don't think either will be lifting the trophy in May. Man City consider to continue to be Jekyll and Hyde this season in the extreme, blowing a 2-goal lead in Paris in midweek to leave their Champions League hopes hanging by a thread. They're going to need to beat Club Brugge next week and hope results go their way to get into the not even straight into the last 16. They'll have to play knockout match before that, which who would have thought that really? But that just kind of tell you where City's season has been. That said, I do think there's been some signs of improvement from Pep Guardiola's men recently. They did thump Ipswich 6-0 last weekend at Portman Road, and they also stuffed West Ham 4-1 fairly recently. Only a late collapse at Brentford where they were 2-0 up and ended up drawing 2-2. Or else they'd be coming into this game having won 4 Premier League games in a row. So they definitely are playing better. The goals are flowing again. 14 in their last 4 league games, including and then 2 against PSG, 8 against Salford in the FA Cup. Although we'll take that with a pinch of salt. But they're still leaking goals, aren't they? Left, right, and centre. Chelsea, meanwhile, they did all the hard work in parachuting themselves right into this title race, only to falter at the worst possible time with a really rotten 5-game winless run against some of the division's lesser sides. All games where they were odds on to win, and they didn't win any of them. And how costly is that going to be? It looks very much so. But they'll just hope that they can just steady the ship, get back on course for a top 4 finish, which I think at the start of the season would have been considered a real success for this young squad, despite all the money that's been spent. Feels a bit ludicrous saying that, but there we are. They did at least halt their poor run last time out. They beat Wolves 3-1, but I think we have to caveat that with how poor Wolves were in that game and how poor Wolves have been for most of this season. But it has at least been refreshing to see their goals spread out a bit more in recent times. Normally, I have them as a team very, very reliant on the goals of Cole Palmer, but I think we've seen like 5 or 6 different scorers in their last 4 games, which can only be a good thing when you're not relying on one man, I think, more generally going forward. One guy I did want to flag, I'm not going to put him up, so you can guarantee this will probably win now, but Tosin Adarabioyo, the centre-half that they picked up from Fulham, he's a real threat in the opposition box, and I think he scored 3 in his last 3 games, so he's 14 to 1 any time. So I probably will really, really regret not putting this up when he pops up from a corner. But I just thought that was one worth mentioning. My actual selection for this game is goals. I'm going to keep it very simple. I was pleasantly surprised to see odds against about over 3.5 goals, a little bit of, just north of 11 to 10 available at the moment with BetMGM. That's the way I'm going to play this game. Like I said, Man City bang amongst the goals, 14 in the last 4 league games, but they're also really, really struggling to keep clean sheets. And Chelsea have so many attacking threats, but like themselves, like City, looking a little bit frail at the back and a little bit giving up opportunities in transition, which you'd think City back among the goals will be able to take advantage of. And I generally think this, like you said about that Bournemouth game, looks a really attractive game for the neutral. And this one is a 5:30 kickoff. So we'll be able to enjoy this. And looking forward to this one indeed. On Sunday, then, where we have 4 games, including a very unusual 7 p.m. kickoff. But we'll start with the 2 p.m s. Brad, over to you for Tottenham, who are at home to Leicester. And it might be curtains for Ange Postecoglou if he loses this one.
Yeah, I won't be surprised, to be honest, if either of these managers were dismissed between now and the end of the season with the way they're both performing. But like you said, Ange Postecoglou, I think his job's now is hanging on a knife edge with 7 losses in Tottenham's last 10 Premier League matches. If you look at some of his responses in interviews in the last couple of weeks, couple of months, quite spiky, quite agitated, which is understandable given the pressure that's on him and all the talk around him. But yeah, it's not looking good for him and Tottenham. There is some talk of possibly get beating Liverpool in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg and getting through to the final could possibly save him, but it didn't save Jose Mourinho, of course, who was sacked in the week of the Carabao Cup final when he was at Tottenham. So it's, it really isn't looking good for him. The results really do need to start picking up if he is to remain in the dugout next season. It's hard not to have sympathy for him, I think, given the injuries. But there's still no excuse to be playing the way that they are. I've touched on Bournemouth, the amount of injuries they've got, and look how they're still performing on a much tighter budget. They made Everton, an Everton side, as I touched upon, who have been struggling to score goals all season. They made them look like prime Brazil in the first half at Goodison last weekend, and they couldn't score to save their life previously. And his stubbornness to keep playing this expansive open football, it is going to cost him, I think, if he doesn't change soon, but he doesn't look like he's going to. So it is hard to envisage him being in the job for much longer. Fortunately for him and for Tottenham, they do face a Leicester side who look even more awful. I think it's fair to say they've lost their last 7 on the spin in the Premier League, conceding 7 goals in their last 2 without scoring themselves. They're 19th in the table. They're still only 2 points adrift of safety, so 1 or 2 positive results could see them make serious progress in that respect, but it is hard to see where those points are coming from based on what we've seen from them for the majority of Ruud van Nistelrooy's short tenure at the King Power. For all of Tottenham's troubles, they've mainly been at the back. I think that's where most of their injuries are, to be fair. Most of their back line has been wiped out. I think 4 of the 5 first-choice defenders and goalkeeper for Postecoglou are currently out at the minute. Their attacking numbers themselves are actually very positive. They've averaged 2.05 scored in the Premier League, which rises to 2.36 at home, and they've only failed to score at home once so far this season. They also face a Leicester side with only 1 clean sheet this season and who have conceded over 2.5 in half of their away games. And like you touched on with the last one, Man City and Chelsea, I was also pleasantly surprised to see over 2.5 Tottenham goals come in at 11 to 10 with Betfair and odds against, given everything that I've just said there. So I'm going to keep it simple with this one too. Over 2.5 Tottenham goals. They've not been great. I think it's probably an understatement to say that of Tottenham this season, but Leicester look abysmal and almost look destined to drop back down to the Championship. So I am going to back Postecoglou and his men to have some brief respite from the negative talk this weekend. Not that I expect it to continue for very long, but yeah, that's where I'll be going. Over 2.5 Tottenham goals, 11 to 10 with Betfair.
That's if he gets through tonight as well, we should caveat, because we're filming on Thursday. They've got to play Hoffenheim tonight in the Europa League, and a bad result there could make things even more perilous. But you would think Leicester lost 7 straight now, and the problem for Leicester with me is at least at the start of the season, they were carrying a great goal threat. They were scoring virtually every game. They've just lost back-to-back home games without scoring, and it's really, really worrying. And Ruud van Nistelrooy having a nightmare time there, isn't he? Anyway, move on to the other 2 p.m. on Sunday, which is Crystal Palace taking on Brentford. Looking forward to this one as well, because Crystal Palace, I think they're really, really improving. Well, they have improved. It's been sustained now. And this is more like what we saw at the start of Oliver Glasner's time at the club at the back end of last season, and why they came in with expectations quite high. I think in hindsight, the loss of Michael Olise did take a little while for them to get their head round, but he seems to have settled on a system now where the attacking players are just kind of been left to do their thing. And Jean-Philippe Mateta's back among the goals, isn't he? He scored 4 in his last 3. That's him up to 8 for the campaign. They've now only lost 1 in 11 in the Premier League, Palace, winning 3 of the last 4, and a couple of clean sheets on the road in their last 2 games. So all lots of positives for them. They're facing a Brentford side who did get their first away win earlier this month against Southampton, 5-0, quite an emphatic win. But it's fair to say that was the outlier in recent times. That's their only win in their last 9 across all competitions. And they've actually also suffered a really embarrassing defeat to Plymouth in the FA Cup, who were bottom of the Championship. So I think we can take that Southampton result out because of Southampton's struggle. This is a Brentford side really, really struggling at the moment against a Palace side who quite simply are going really, really well at the moment. So I don't need to overcomplicate this, do I? I was really encouraged to see Palace at odds against. There's still some 11-10 available at the moment on a home win. And I think sometimes you can look and look and look, but sometimes the most obvious bet is just right in front of you. So I'm going to keep it simple here, go with the form book, Crystal Palace to win, which, as I say, it's 11-10 at the moment. I would not be surprised to see this go off the other way around, 10-11. I think odds against about these two, all things considered and given the form, it just looks a great bet to me. Brad, back over to you, mate. We've got one game each left to do. You've got the 4:30 kickoff, which is Aston Villa taking on West Ham. Intriguing affair.
Yeah, they'd be familiar with each other, these two sides. They've already played at this venue earlier this month in the FA Cup, of course, where Villa ran out 2-1 winners. That kick-started a run which saw them go 5 matches unbeaten in all competitions, Villa. But that is now over after a 1-0 loss to Monaco in the Champions League on Tuesday. They really struggled to create anything out there, Villa, and obviously dealt a big blow now to their automatic qualification hopes in the Champions League. But they will, of course, be eyeing up a place in the competition for next season too. And they are only 4 points off 4th heading into this one, of course, fighting back to earn a 2-2 draw at Arsenal last weekend, despite going 2-0 down at the Emirates. I think Unai Emery have been greatly encouraged by what he saw and the reaction from his players after going 2-0 down. It would have been easy to let their heads drop, but they didn't. They showed a lot of resilience, and like I said, they got themselves back into the game. They face a West Ham side who I think are still struggling post Julian Lopetegui's departure. The loss at Villa Park was Graham Potter's first match in charge. They have since beat Fulham 3-2, but were pretty fortunate that night. In my opinion, they gave Fulham gave them a lot of chances really to put the ball in the back of the net, and West Ham actually were the second best of the two for large portions of that one. They also lost at home 2-0 to Crystal Palace last weekend too, and I think Villa Park is a very tough place to go at the best of times, never mind when you need a result. They boast the 4th best home record in the Premier League, do Villa. And I am going to keep it simple, and back the same result from a couple of weeks ago with Villa winning and both teams scoring. Villa have won 6 of their 11 matches at Villa Park, losing only once in the Premier League, but both teams have scored in 73% of those games. West Ham, they do boast only the 12th best away record in the league, but have scored in 9 of their 10 away matches. So yeah, 9-4, I think that's a no-brainer. Just over 2-1. Villa win with both teams to score to get back on track after a disappointing result midweek.
Yeah, Villa and both teams to score for Brad in his final game. Then just me to round things off then. Sunday night, as I say, 7 p.m, interesting kickoff time, sees Fulham take on Manchester United. Brad shaking his head there, thinking there's an agenda against Liverpool, I think, with the kickoff times. But yeah, we won't go down that path. We'll be here another 10 minutes. Fulham versus Manchester United. And yeah, this is a sign of the time, isn't it? Fulham are going off quite strong favourites in the betting against Manchester United. But I think that probably, as much as I like Fulham, probably tells you more about where Manchester United are at these days. I saw somebody just describing it earlier in the week. Can't remember quite who it was now, just saying like they're just a mid-table side, and the market's finally realised that. And it's harsh, but it's probably right, isn't it? Fulham just shy of 6-4 to win this. Man United north of 2-1. Marco Silva's men do deserve some respect, obviously. They've only lost 2 of their last 15 Premier League games, for goodness sake, which is a fantastic run of form. 7 draws and 6 wins in that sequence as well. United, meanwhile, under Ruben Amorim, well, where did you start with trying to work it out? They were really good against Liverpool, one of the best performances I've seen from them in a while. They knocked Arsenal out of the FA Cup on penalties, despite going down to 10 men, and you think, they're maybe starting to turn it around now. And then in classic United style of the last what feels like a decade. Terrible against Southampton, yet won it 3-1 with 3 very late goals, got out of jail there, and then they were really found out by Brighton last time out, losing 3-1 at home. Brighton, very good value for that victory. Amorim has since come out and said that we may need to be realistic here. This may be the worst Man United team we've ever seen, which I'm sure just gets the confidence flowing through the players' veins. But fair play to him for saying it. I think he's trying to, for my money, trying to distance himself from this group of players and just kind of say, we need a complete overhaul, which I'm sure is music to the ears of Ineos, who seem to be trying to save £10 by like sacking cleaners and stuff at the moment. So sure, they're desperate to spend 300 million next summer again. But here we are. Anyway, in terms of this game, well, I think Fulham are fair favourites, but I don't want to hang my hat on them. In fact, I don't want to get involved in any kind of match prediction with Man United at the moment. I'm looking at players that have improved under Amorim and are enjoying his system. And we had a little bit of success putting up Amad Diallo recently, but I'm going to go for somebody else who I think is really impressive in the system. And it's his countryman, Bruno Fernandes, Amorim's countryman, of course. And I think Fernandes, it just seems to be clicking for him. There's a lot of responsibility on him in this system. He clearly likes Amorim, having worked with him at Sporting Lisbon previously and played with him. And I just think there's, if United are going to do something in this game, it's quite possible it's going to come through Fernandes. He is the heartbeat of this side. He can be very, very bad. He can be absolutely unplayable at times. I think at just short of 4-1, he'd score any time, especially when you consider he's on penalty taking duties as well. There's a lot of juice in that price. And even if Fulham do get the better of United, would not surprise me at all to see Fernandes finding the back of the net at 15-4. So that rounds off our 10 picks for this week. Well, we actually had some bonus picks in there as well, didn't we? Brad, we'll run through your picks first, mate. Pull them up on the screen there. What would your best bet be of this weekend?
Probably Villa to win with both teams scoring. It's happened twice when they've played each other this season. So, yeah, I'll stick with that one, I think.
Okay, Villa and BTTS for Brad. There are my best bets back on the screen for anyone that wants to see them. I will keep it very, very simple and say Crystal Palace to beat Brentford at odds against. I know you had some success putting Palace up in midweek as well, Brad, and it does feel like the market are maybe not quite taking enough notice of how much they've improved in recent times. And I think combined with Brentford's abject away record, just looks really rock solid to me at 11-10. So we'll see how we fare, and we'll be back next week in our usual Thursday slot. I hope you enjoyed watching this week's Premier League betting show. Let us know in the comments who you're backing this weekend. And if you haven't already, please do press subscribe and stick around for all the fantastic content coming on the Odds Now YouTube channel over the coming weeks. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.